TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no veil, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop, come on, baby, higher.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's the Breakfast Bankroll for Thursday, October 17th, 2024, in just 2 weeks. 2 weeks. The sports equinox, November 1st. All the sports will be playing at once, including NCAA basketball. I get a little giddy there as my Yukon Huskies go for a three-peat, something that hasn't been done since the John Wooden era. I can't wait to try to, on Thursdays, to pick Paul's brain as we're going further in the football and just get a hint of who he likes in college hoops. The man with the numbers here, super stoked, of course. But we got 2 weeks, and I want to talk to him about the dust settling after last week and some big games, some big implications this week here. Of course, the headliner, Texas and Georgia. And if you guys weren't watching what was going on at the Circa yesterday, I'll lead with that with Paul and try to see if he can help me understand that. First and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsor and partnerships. Of course, it's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download that app. It's free. I promise you it'll be one of the most used apps the rest of this year and, of course, moving into 2025. Viva Tequila Seltzer, CT Bets Team Family, second to none. The East Coast is cuckoo for coconut. Go try one. And, of course, Terry Smith at Atlanta Steak and Seafood. Jump on over to Facebook. Follow Terry Smith. And then while you're there, of course, head on over to Atlanta Steak and Seafood website, place an order, and at the checkout window, use Seafood20. Seafood20. Get $20 off any box of seafood, lobster tails, sea bass. The list is endless there. Salmon, what he has to offer there. The product is second to none, and the customer service is the best in the business. So without further ado, let's bring in the star of this show, the one and only Mr. Paul Stone.
How are we doing, Jeff? Glad to be with you. Another weekend of college football drawing closer. And as you mentioned, the big headliner down there in Austin, Texas with Georgia, national champion 2 of the past 3 seasons, traveling to face top-ranked Texas.
You know, something crazy happened yesterday, and I'm a numbers guy. I trust and respect the opening number, and we follow 50 sports books all around the globe, Paul. But, you know, in the States, we really focus on the Circa, Jeffrey Benson, Derek Stevens. Those guys are second to none, as sharp as they come. I have been following them and known Jeffrey for a while now. And when he puts out a quirky number, 9 times out of 10, they're spot on. But yesterday, something crazy happened here. Georgia opened 3.5, and at his shop went to 4, 4.5, 5, and even tipped at 5.5. And I just sent him a DM and saying, I guess that some of the Texas oil money came to your shop a little early. I can fathom Georgia catching 5.5 against the Patriots. Never mind now Texas, and no disrespect to Texas, but what the hell's going on there, Paul?
Yeah, the report's been early that the so-called squares are betting Texas, so there's more tickets being bet on Texas, but the so-called sharps to this point, or I should say the squares betting Georgia, the so-called sharps to this point, though, being on Texas. And yesterday we saw another wave of money, as you mentioned, driving Texas all the way up to a 5.5-point favorite. At some point, and as we speak here, of course, Thursday morning, the groups, the sharps that favored Georgia are going to enter the marketplace. And I would think that would be today. These shops, they hit their limits, whatever the limit's going to be for the week. They pretty much all get to their limit on Thursday. So I would think sometime today, we're probably going to see a little Georgia money and maybe push the line down maybe to 4, say. I really thought there was going to be some 3 show up when the line opened on Sunday, but we're not going to see 3, I don't think. But I think it could get down to 4. But a lot of respect for Texas. I mean, as good as Georgia's been, they're 47-3 straight up their last 50 games. But now in his 9th year, Kirby Smart only 2-5 straight up versus AP top 15 teams, and included in that total 0-2 against AP top 5 teams, which certainly Texas is. So hadn't had great success in these type of games. But as you mentioned, I mean, man, I'm just surprised at the lack of respect shown for this recent historical run that we've seen by Georgia. They're still Georgia, and the king does not go down easily. And I'm sure they're going to be all hands on deck Saturday night and put their best foot forward against the Longhorns.
As I said, no disrespect to Texas. They're the best team in the country currently right now. Ewers got actually his a game to get the rust off. You could see the rust early in the Oklahoma game, 3-0. Then they go out and outscore them 28-0. Oklahoma really banged up, offensively challenged against a real good Texas defense. And now in comes Georgia. That sense of urgency, the schedule set up where a Texas win and let's just say a Tennessee win against Alabama. Who would have thought? I know I didn't have in my bingo card that in, October, let's say 19th, you'd be looking at Georgia and Alabama with 2 losses.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, this is such a balanced league. And you've got Vanderbilt. I mean, who would have thought before the season, for instance, everybody, especially Texas fans, talked about we got the neutral site game in Dallas against Oklahoma on October 12th and then host Georgia that next week, October 19th. Certainly nobody thought about, from a Texas perspective, then the next week, October 26th, we got to go to Vanderbilt. And now that's become a big game. I mean, who would have thought in that 3-game set, and no disrespect to Oklahoma, but the easiest of those games is probably going to be Oklahoma on a neutral. Vanderbilt is they're a confident football team. They've got a bulldog of a quarterback in Diego Pavia, but this SEC is just it's just a rigorous league. There's just no really easy outs. Mississippi State, certainly 16th in the 16-team pecking order, but Georgia only beat them 41-31 last week. So it's not like they're without a pulse. They're starting to really improve, is Mississippi State, with true freshman quarterback Michael Van Buren. So truly, this is a league, especially when you go on the road, where nothing can be taken for granted. There's no automatic victories. It's almost like the mini NFL. The teams are just not separated by a large degree. So man, it makes for great theater. I still say, and it might be Saturday night, but I still say Texas is not going to go undefeated. They'll have a blemish at some point. This is just a great college football conference.
Last week, excuse me, a week to pre-flop, and of course, I don't think they let us down. A lot of marquee games. I'm going to go out to Oregon and Ohio State. We talked about it on the show. I talked about it all week. I sent it out on Saturday. Dylan Gabriel, 15-1 on Saturday for the Heisman Trophy. Like we did with Milroe before they played Georgia, we got him at 750. At halftime, he was the favorite at 250. Ohio State loses in a last second opportunity to go for the win slash tie there. Oregon wins. Dylan Gabriel now the second favorite behind the running back for Boise State, Ashton there. But I'm going to say this. I compare, go back last year, Paul, Washington and Oregon at Washington. Uh, uh, Oregon made a lot of mistakes. Oregon had opportunities to win that game. When the dust settled, Washington won. And in my mind, Oregon was the better team. They were going to get their opportunity in the Pac 12 championship. 9-point favorites. And Michael Penix Jr. said, "Hold my beer. We're going to the Final Four." I left that game, no disrespect to Dylan Gabriel, no disrespect to the Ducks, but I left that game in a rematch, neutral field, or at Ohio State. I just think Ohio State's still the better team.
Yeah, I mean, people who do power ratings like myself, Ohio State did not get docked at all for going to Eugene, Oregon on a Saturday night in mid-October and having a chance to win. It was basically a toss-up game. It could have gone either way. Ohio State's still number one in my power ratings, and I know there'll be disagreement with that, but I think they're the most complete roster in all of college football, just a notch ahead of Texas at this point. So, yeah, on a neutral field, certainly Ohio State would be favored over Oregon. And again, no disrespect to Dylan Gabriel. I mean, he played much like he did. I think I talked about it on this show last week. Certainly did on some appearances that if Dylan Gabriel plays for Oregon against Ohio State on the second Saturday in October, like he did last year for Oklahoma against Texas on the second Saturday in October, then the Ducks would have a great chance to win. And he certainly came through. I mean, he, much like kind of like Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel seems to be a big game hunter. He seems to be a guy who steps it up a notch when the stage is grand and the lights are the brightest.
Another great game, and it was kind of comical. 20-6 at halftime, USC Trojans beating the Nittany Lions. And of course, Colin Cowherd at a Los Angeles sports bar or whatever, watching the games, has to create a video and say, "All you naysayers owe Lincoln Riley an apology. How dare you think they can't compete in the Big Ten?" Well, what a second half by Penn State, overtime. Big boy win for the Penn State Nittany Lions at USC.
Yeah, it was a big win. I'm not a Lincoln Riley apologist. I mean, I don't get into personalities. We all have our favorites and guys we don't really like. But USC, man, they did have some tough calls not go their way in overtime. There seemed to be some interference. And I don't usually talk about officiating, but I thought they kind of got a little bit of a raw deal there. But, Penn State, they just they keep on keeping on. They obviously have not had great success in recent seasons against the big two, Michigan and Ohio State, but otherwise they seem to take care of business. And James Franklin, from a betting perspective, he always keeps you in mind. So if you have a ticket with James, he might sneak in that front door and score a late one for old time's sake, so to speak. So Penn State where they need to be, and I think that's that big game next week. I believe it is there at home in Happy Valley with the Buckeyes coming to call. So that'll be a big one next week we'll be talking about.
I said the landscape in the intro for this weekend really going to be a telltale sign moving forward. We talked a little, obviously, about Texas and Texas and Georgia. Let's go to Alabama, traveling to Tennessee. Was talking to Tyler Wyatt yesterday on our show. I was at the Super Bowl Radio Row last year, and I was interviewing Jalen Hyatt, now of the Giants, and we were talking about that game 2 years ago, the 50-47 game. Joe Milton to Jalen Hyatt 5 times against Alabama there. Now, Alabama has crept to a 3-point favorite against Tennessee. A handful of weeks ago, we were talking about this vaunted Tennessee offense and defense. Seen some chinks in the armor there, and the same with Alabama. Their defense, their consistency here. Big game for both. The loser will have 2 losses. Thoughts about Alabama now 3-point favorites at Tennessee?
Yeah, some games, we look at, Jeff, either if they're big ones like this one or even games kind of down the sheet a little bit, and we kind of have a head scratching opinion. It's hard to really get a grip on it. You look at Tennessee, and not to be critical of Nico Iamaleava, first-year starter for Tennessee, but he came in with a big 5-star reputation, and he's played very little football. But their vertical passing game has really been lacking. They're not. Of course, they beat up on those first 3 opponents who were totally outmanned and outscored them 1,000-10 or whatever. And then when they started, having to fight guys their own size, they kind of got exposed a little bit. So you have to be a little bit, just concerned or wondering where this Tennessee team is, how good they are. Now they lose their top linebacker for the season to injury. He won't play against Alabama or the rest of the season. So got some issues there. And then you look at this Alabama team, at times, man, they really, really look good offensively, but the defense is not at that championship level where they've been in recent years under Nick Saban when they were winning and contending for national championships each year, and especially vulnerable do the Crimson Tide appear to be in the back of that defense. So, I just really, Tennessee, though, getting 3. I think we're seeing a lot of 3 now. An orange out there in Knoxville, Neyland Stadium. I'd have to lean towards taking the 3 points. But I just kind of have questions about both these teams. Who is the real Alabama? Who is the real Tennessee? How will these teams evolve the second half of the season?
And last on the bingo card, diehard Cornhusker fan from the 80s, Dr. Tom Osborne, Tommy Frazier, Urban Fryer. The list is endless. I've been waiting to get back to those days, which, of course, nothing better, Paul, than 4th and 8, call a timeout, line up in the wishbone, tell the opposing defenses we're going to run it and get the first down. I know I won't see that again, but Matt Rule in his second year, a year ahead of schedule, 5-1 versus an undefeated Hoosier team. Again, a shocker in the number here, 6s and 6.5s. And for me, the only way that number can go is down. I mean, I would think Nebraska will be one of those public trendy dogs like I think Georgia will tomorrow. No disrespect to Indiana, but surprised with that number, Paul.
I am surprised. Yes, a little bit higher than I anticipated it would be. Certainly Kurt Cignetti's coming over as the first-year head coach from James Madison. He got a quarterback out of the transfer portal, Curtis Rourke from Ohio. He brought at least 9 of his players, his best players from James Madison, to Bloomington. And Indiana has really been prolific offensively. They've dominated their opposition, but their opposition's been very soft to this point, much like Nebraska. The second half of their schedule is much meatier, shall we say, than the first half. So these teams, they start, punching up in weight class, and it starts with this just much anticipated affair against one another on Saturday in Bloomington. And I think it's a little bit too high. I think Nebraska's better on defense. They've played a little bit better schedule, and it just seems like the public's infatuation with Indiana and the way that they've played, especially on offense, has maybe gotten this thing a little bit out of control. If you can be patient, it might not get there. I hadn't seen it touch 7 yet, but if it touches 7, especially if you're just a numbers guy, you almost have to take Nebraska at some level, in my opinion, and probably even at 6.5. I think this game's going to be one that could go either way. And again, we don't know really who these teams are because some teams play such easy non-conference schedules. Their conference schedules are unbalanced, so they don't play the top teams early in the conference schedule. So we can get to October 19th and have teams that are undefeated with one loss who really hadn't played anybody for the most part. So we'll find out a lot about both these teams on Saturday there in Bloomington.
Before we get to your selections and the games that we're going to break down here, I wanted to give you a couple minutes. A big story that is getting talked about. I was blessed to be a part of Radio Row. It was in Boston last year. That was Army Navy. And then on Saturday, myself and Anthony Pepe were on the field for the whole game. We had field passes. A day I'll never forget. It was the most amazing day to be on the field and rubbing elbows with ESPN and all the big dogs there, and just watching the pageantry and watching the respect that both teams had for each other. Both undefeated, both now in a conference. Thoughts on Army and Navy's performance so far this year, Paul?
Just incredible. You know, we say all the time, and I think sometimes it's kind of just lip service, just saying what we're supposed to say as media representatives. But for me, my love of college football is better when Army and Navy are at their best. And of course, the level they're at this year, both with a legitimate chance at this point to be the group of 5 representative of the 12-team playoff, is just incredible. And I don't think anybody really could have seen it coming. I mean, their quarterback play for both, Bryson Daly for Army, Blake Harvath for Navy, has just been incredible. Their offense is gimmicky. It's difficult to defend. There's a lot of motion, a lot of eye candy. They don't pass it often, but when they pass it, it's usually the surprise element, and they usually catch people out of position, and it can go for big plays. Army averaging 13.5 yards per pass attempt this year as a testament to that. So just incredible. It would be something if both these teams, it's probably unlikely. I mean, if you look at each game, you say, yeah, they'll be undefeated, but there's always hiccups that happen, but boy, it would be just incredible if Army and Navy were undefeated when they meet at the end of the season with such high stakes. But it's just a joy to watch. I love watching those guys, and I look forward to the games with Notre Dame. Those are going to be, early in the year, before the year, when you start assessing schedules and reviewing schedules, and you look at it from Notre Dame's perspective, you don't think much about it. But now you have to think quite a bit about it. I was trying to find the dates here, but those are going to be a big game there. Notre Dame hosting Navy or playing Navy on October 26th. So next weekend, and then later in the year, they're November 23rd playing Army. Those are going to be incredible games. It's going to be interesting to see how the service academies fare against the Fighting Irish.
Last question before we get to your plays here. There's some decent games tonight. Well, there's 2 games tonight. BC and Virginia Tech, Paul, opened at 7, now 7.5. Virginia Tech's been my kryptonite. I basically put them on the DNP list. And then, of course, they should have beat Miami, and now their offense is rolling. I know good friend and colleague, Mr. Ron Marmolevsky, who we'll have on at 5 o'clock tonight, was very, I thought highly of them to start the year. It looks like they're rounding into form, Paul. BC coming off a bye, and next Friday night hosting Louisville. Expectations of BC Virginia Tech tonight. Now it's up to 7.5 at most shops at the Circa and at the Vegas Strip.
Yeah, I'm not involved at this point, Jeff, but I might be. I think I've talked about it on this show before. Boston College is a team that has thrived in the underdog role against the spread in recent years, not so much in the favorites role. So, and this clearly is a more physical Boston College team. Like you said, Virginia Tech, started slowly, getting upset by a Vanderbilt team. That loss not looking quite as bad as it did at the time. And obviously they had a great opportunity to defeat Miami there, which was one that just kind of slipped away. So the Hokies definitely getting better, definitely on an upward plane. But I think this game, 7.5's a good number. I always like to look at those games that are the line between 7 and 10, 7.5 and 9.5. The line maker's kind of in that no man's land, and you got to put them somewhere in there. They're maybe more than a touchdown, but less than a touchdown and a field goal. So I think you can find some value on either side sometimes, the favorite or are the underdog. And I think here that there might be a little value with BC.
All right, we're going to go to a 2-second commercial break, and we'll be back. We'll go over the 3 games that we're going to break down today. Stay tuned. We're going to break down 3 games, Paul, you selected. And the first one, of course, go right to Army. Army hosting East Carolina, an opening number of 15.5 of the 51.5. Currently 15.5 of the 51.5. Thoughts on Army hosting East Carolina?
Yeah, sometimes, Jeff, you just go with the hot hand, and certainly few are hotter these days than the Army Black Knights from a betting perspective. First of all, straight up, they're 6-0, nationally ranked. They've won all 6 of their games outright by 17 points or more. They're winning those 6. They've won those 6 games by an average of just a shade under 30 points a game. So they have really dominated, to be frank, an easy schedule at this point. But, man, they have been impressive to this point. Also 6-0 against the spread on the season, and one of only 2 teams, the other being Indiana, who we talked about earlier, one of only 2 teams who have not trailed in a game at any point this season. And we talked about their second-year starting quarterback, Bryson Daly, a little bit earlier. He's rushed for a team-leading 738 yards, 6.9 yards per carry, thrown for another 482, again, averaging 13.5 yards per pass attempt. And he's accounted or played a role in 20 of Army's touchdowns this year. He's rushed for 14 and thrown for the other 6. Army, even though they do use that pass selectively and effectively, typically, they are obviously predominantly a run-dominant option offense. They run the ball on 87.5% of their offensive plays. And that's what I think is going to be problematic here. Army averages 369 yards rushing a game, 6.8 yards per carry. You look at this East Carolina team that they're playing Saturday in their last game against Charlotte. That was a 55-24 loss to Charlotte. East Carolina allowed 311 rushing yards. They gave up 6 yards per carry to Charlotte, 311 yards. To put that in perspective, in their previous game against Rice, Charlotte only rushed for 67 yards on 29 carries. So they only averaged 2.3 yards per carry against Rice, only 67 total yards rushing. And then their next game against East Carolina, they go for 311 yards rushing, 6 yards a carry. What's Army going to do to them? Army, not only does East Carolina not defend the run very well, but Army uses the eye candy. They use the misdirection, all the deception. I mean, they could really, and I'm not saying this just as just throwing something out there. Army could rush for 400 yards in this game. It could really get ugly. I look for Army to continue their domination of their opponents. Army minus 15.5 over East Carolina. You want me to just go in?
Yeah, the second game we had, where's my eyes now? It was Iowa at Michigan State, an opening number of 5.5 with a 41, now 5.5 with a 40.5.
Yeah, I'll look at this game. And first of all, Iowa is, I look at point spread rolls and sometimes you take them with a grain of salt, but certainly I think Iowa's performance as an away favorite since 2014 cannot be taken with a grain of salt. In the last 10 years plus, the Hawkeyes are 26-1 against the spread as an away favorite. So they've covered 20 times, failed to cover 6 times, and pushed once. So they're very good in this role. Iowa always good defensively, one of the leaders in all the major statistical categories almost every season, maybe down just a slight bit this year defensively, but still Michigan State's talented but erratic quarterback, Aiden Childs, he's thrown 8 interceptions this year in his 5 games against FBS competition. He's also been sacked a total of 9 times in his last 3 games. So I don't think that bodes well for Michigan State going up against this Iowa offense. Also, Michigan State 1-3 straight up against the Power 4 opponents that they've faced so far on their schedule. And that Iowa team, talking about the turnovers by Childs, Iowa has produced 2 turnovers against all 3 of its Big Ten opponents. So they do produce turnovers as part of that defensive performance. So I like the Iowa Hawkeyes, who are better on offense, minus the 5.5 in East Lansing over Michigan State.
They've quietly put together a great season, and again, they're not the Ohio State and the Penn States, but or last year's Michigan, but they're hanging around with the Nebraskas and the Hoosiers. So big spot for Iowa with another win. And then obviously, if Nebraska loses, they'll have 2 losses, or if they happen to pick off Indiana, there'll be 3 teams with 1 loss there. And lastly, Mississippi State hosting A&M, a number that opened at 14 with a 55.5. I'm seeing some 16, some 16.5s. Jeffrey Benson at the Circle posting the 17. Must have got some Aggie money overnight there. Thoughts on Mississippi State? Great battle last week. Able to put some points up. Good quarterback as well. Thoughts on them hosting the Aggies on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm surprised at all this money being bet on Texas A&M. Excuse me, Jeff, as a road favorite, over 2 touchdown road favorite. Like you said, that line hitting 17. I don't know if it was late last night or early this morning, but I think it's currently 17 there at Circa in downtown Las Vegas. You know, Mississippi State, they are 1-5, and there's no question that they're number 16 in the pecking order of the 16-team SEC. They are the bottom feeder. But we don't, as sports bettors, we don't turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to the teams that are, down the sheet a little bit. The point spread can be the great equalizer. So we'll look for value wherever we can find it. And I think Mississippi State, which is playing better in their last 2 games, they're worth a play here at getting up to 17 points against Texas A&M. First of all, first-year head coach Jeff Lebby, who's formerly the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, is now the head coach at Mississippi State. They started really slow in their first 4 games. They didn't do anything to merit our wagering trust, so to speak. Their home loss to Toledo, lost by a few touchdowns to the Rockets, very deflating. But you look at their last 2 games, and those games, both on the road against top-ranked Texas and 5th-ranked Georgia, and they've really put a better foot forward. They trailed Texas by only 8 points until late in the 3rd quarter. And then last week, as you mentioned, only lost to Georgia between the hedges, 41-31 in that game. They did have to go to a true freshman quarterback, Michael Van Buren, after Blake Shapen, their game 1 starter, was lost for the season. But Van Buren was a big-time recruit. He was at one time committed to the University of Oregon. So that shows you the kind of player he is. Got a very strong arm. He showed it last week. He's getting better. And he showed it last week against Georgia, threw for 306 yards against the Bulldogs, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. So this team is getting, Mississippi State team's getting better. Texas A&M, certainly, we saw them lose their season opener at home to Notre Dame. Aggies didn't look very good in that game, but they've really rebounded the last 5, won all 5 of those games, firmly back in the playoff picture. Got to travel to Starkville. But next week, they host LSU at Kyle Field, a big game. They might have one eye back home there on Kyle Field. 17's a lot of points, so I'll take the points with Mississippi State over Texas A&M.
Hopefully the cowbells will be loud there, and I truly expect them. And I love the eyes, too, with the look-ahead spot. Perfect spot there as well. Paul, everyone knows on Twitter to go follow you at paulstonesports. But as we always end your segment here, tell them where they can find your website and your selections if they'd like.
Yeah, if they want to take their interest a little bit further, my website is paulstonesports.org. You can see what I have to offer there. Again, paulstonesports.org.
Paul, always a pleasure. My favorite segment of the week. Best of luck this week. Go Texas, and we will see you next week.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. Have a great week of college football.
You too. Take care. The one and only Paul Stone. Go follow him on Twitter at Paul Stone Sports. Check out his website at paulstonesports.org. One of the best in the business. If you are a serious investor, it would be worth your while to take a look. Again, the breakdowns, the inside information, the number crunching that we bring on to this show, second to none. Going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up and tell you what we have planned in the ECSI studios for the rest of the day.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop, and I'm bringing higher. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop.
ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app. Well, again, I love this spot during the week here on Thursdays with Paul Stone, able to really crunch some numbers and talk. He's been in this business as long as I have, one of the best in the business. Head on over to Twitter at paulstonesports, and of course, check out his website at paulstonesports.org. 3 o'clock. Lou Finocchiaro back in the octagon with the UFC. We'll be breaking down a handful of fights there for this weekend's UFC card. And at 5 o'clock, Ron Marmolewski at Ron A Sports, doing what we do best, wrapping up the day, talking some college football and NFL. So I want to shout out Amber Hawley, Richard Poplis, and of course, Mr. Saylor. We can't do it without you guys. If you haven't already, head on over to YouTube at East Coast Sports Investors. Subscribe. It's free. Turn on your notifications and never miss a show. Everyone, have a blessed day. We'll see you later this afternoon, 3 o'clock. Lou Finocchiaro, UFC. And we will see you soon.